Sikhs from around the world by showcasing their professions, passions, and perspectives. I'm your host, Mandheer Singh, aka the Nihung. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Sarabveer Singh, welcome to the Nihung's arena.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and let you give us a little background about yourself. But just so people know, this is the first time I've actually met you and talked to you. We were involved in a discussion on Facebook, and I happened to notice that you seem to know a little bit more than the average person when it comes to the Mool Nanakshahi Calendar. And we're gonna go in depth a little bit more on that today. But before we get to that, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, what you're studying, and how you got interested in this?
So I'm currently a college student. I'm currently studying at the New Jersey Institute of Technology, so it's a state college, and currently majoring in IT. So, computers and all that, and also minoring in computer science. So I like programming. And I don't really have a background in calendars. I just happened to fall into it. I just wanted my background is I wanted to develop a basic website for the Nanakshahi calendar. Just ended up getting into all of this, into the nitty gritty stuff.
Yeah, and that's nanakshahi.net is your website.
Yeah, that's the website. Yeah.
And if people go check that out, you can easily go on there and kind of see what are the Gurupurabs, what are the different things that are happening. And you even have converters on there that can convert dates and stuff like that. But we were talking earlier before we got started here, and you mentioned how when you were younger in school, you were very interested in astronomy and how I guess the solar system works and stuff. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So about astronomy or my interest in astronomy?
Yeah, your interest in it.
I'm just interested in the Earth in general, how I understand we live on Earth, but what is in outer space? We're so small.
Yeah.
If you look at the context of Earth, we're so small. Outer space is so huge, and I was just as a kid that just fascinated me.
Right.
And we'd be in a class, and the science. We had a teacher, right? She'd be teaching science, and I'd just be I'll open the textbook. I wouldn't be paying attention to what the teacher's saying. I would be in the astronomy section looking look at these cool planets like Jupiter, look at Saturn, look at those rings. I was as a kid, I was fascinated by that.
Yeah, I think one interesting thing, tying it into Sikhi a little bit, people talk about being able to accept hukum and understanding. Our ego makes us think we're so important and that we're so big. And kind of having that perspective, understanding your place in the universe, which is so huge. And when you think about the Earth as even a part of the solar system, it's just a blip. And that solar system is part of a galaxy, and our solar system is a blip in that. And then a super galaxy, the Milky Way within the super galaxy is just a blip.
Andromeda, then we have all these big clusters, and it's like Earth is nothing compared to that.
You could literally delete it.
And nothing different.
And nothing changed.
Yeah, we just be gone. Exactly.
Yeah. And what I was saying is, that really puts into perspective this concept of why we should accept hukum, because you realize how insignificant your power is, because you realize how insignificant your existence is. Yeah. Right. And the reason I wanted you to touch on the interest in astronomy was because when we do talk about calendars, astronomy plays a huge role in how we calculate what is a year, what is a month, what is a day, what is a second. And we even changed our definition of seconds at one point to go based on solar, right? So we can get into that a little bit later. But at some point, you wanted to build this website, but you must have had some kind of introduction to the concept of the Nanakshahi calendar. And I wonder, what was it about you that made you think, oh, this is interesting, and I should explore this further?
I would credit my interest with the calendar itself to my dad.
Okay.
He's a supporter of the Mool Nanakshahi Calendar, and
Yeah. What's your dad's name?
just Jeet Singh.
Okay.
I think you know about him, and
Yeah.
basically, I always wondered why is this calendar so important. I know like everybody's like there's like always like an argument over it, but I want to know like what is the calendar itself? Is it just because we know like, oh, we celebrate Guru Gobind Singh Ji's Prakash Purb on January 5th, but why do we celebrate? Where does that date come from? Like, how does this all work? And I want to figure that out, and that led to everything else.
Yeah. So, what did you figure out? Why do we celebrate it on January 5th?
So the reason why I celebrate January 5th is that the Nanakshahi calendar, some people forget that the Nanakshahi calendar itself is a calendar. It has its own set of months. The months have different days. And like it has like some month, like compared to Gregorian calendars only have like some months have 31 days, some months have 30 days, and February has 28. Well, Nanakshahi is completely different. The first 5 months of the Nanakshahi calendar, Jade, Visak, Jade, Hard, Savan, they have 31 days in a month, and the rest seven of the months have 30 days. So some people, they forget that the Nanakshahi calendar itself is a separate calendar, not just like a date converter or something like that.
Right. So when we pick January 5th as the day, what we're actually doing is we're saying this is the date on the Nanakshahi calendar, which
corresponds to a date in the Nanakshahi calendar.
Right. Yeah. So January 5th would be this date. Now, just to maybe give a little background on Nanakshahi calendar, my understanding of it is very, very limited. I've attended Singh Purewal's workshops on it, and I find him fascinating. All the debates he's had, all the calculations he's done, how he was very passionate about calendars. It's actually a big hobby of his. Yeah. But it's still, even if you follow along, it's still hard to comprehend, right? Because it's very detailed. But what we're talking about is this is a calendar that is based on the birth of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, right? That's the beginning of the calendar. Just like the calendar we follow, the Gregorian calendar, is based on the birth of Jesus Christ. When you count the years.
So currently we are in Nanakshahi year 552. So that means it doesn't directly mean that it's been 552 years since Guru Nanak Dev Ji. It means that it's so roughly how we're in 2021 at the moment. That doesn't mean it's been 2021 years since Jesus Christ was born, because Christians don't know the exact date of Jesus Christ's birth. And same thing in Nanakshahi. Nanakshahi starts with, theoretically, starts with one Jait and one Nanakshahi. So that's March 14th, 1469. That's the we wouldn't call that a technical. That's a technical date, because back in 1469 there was no Nanakshahi calendar. That was
right. We're reverse calculating that to say this is the date.
Yeah, this is the date we use for the modern Nanakshahi calendar to do the calculations of the modern Nanakshahi calendar, basically.
Right. And why is it even important for us to have a calendar when there's already been calendars in place? We have the whole world is following a calendar. Today is January 6th, 2021. The whole world is following a calendar. Before that, in India, there's been a calendar. The Bikrami calendar has been in place for a very long time. So what is the reason to even have this Nanakshahi calendar? Isn't it just causing confusion?
Well, the thing is that the Bikrami calendar itself was causing confusion. The whole point of the Nanakshahi calendar was to separate ourselves from the confusion of the Bikrami calendar. I'll get more into that if we get to the technical part. But the reason why we have a separate calendar is because we have our own dates. We don't celebrate according to English dates, right? Okay. So it's probably commonly known that Guru Gobind Singh Ji's Prakash date was on December 22nd, 1666. Have you heard of that date?
No.
So like if you search it up on Google and you search Guru Gobind Singh Ji's birthday, Prakash date, it says December 22nd, 1666.
Right.
So that's the English date, right? But the thing is, as a Sikh Panth, we want to remain Nyara, right? We want to be like unique, separate, independent. So we celebrate using the dates, the Desi dates that we have. So the Desi dates we have is Posli Satmi, right? That's the lunar date.
Right.
Then we have 23 Po. That's the solar date. And we want to celebrate according to those days because those are the dates written in our history books, in our history grants, and even like Guru, and even some old beards of Guru Granth Sahib Ji. They have those dates written and like on the folios.
Yeah,
and we want to maintain that. We don't want to just, if we switch all over to Gregorian, then we lose that part of our history, that those dates are written in our history.
Right. And then interestingly enough too, the months are written in Guru Granth Sahib.
Yeah.
Right? So all the months are written there, but the debate comes up because those months were written and everybody followed a Bikrami calendar. And the issue with the Bikrami calendar, or at least the original Bikrami calendar, was that it was lunar based. Can you explain that a little bit? The difference between a solar based calendar and a lunar based calendar, and why there's a difference?
So Bikrami in itself, it's a lunisolar calendar. So that's more complex than just a straight lunar or solar calendar. So that means you have both aspects of a lunar calendar. So it follows the moon phases, and you have aspects of the solar calendar. So, Sangrams, right. Like those are solar based. While you have Purnamashi, Masya, those are lunar based. Those are full moon, new moon. And the Bikrami calendar, it basically tries to combine them into like one calendar. And that's where the confusion comes from, because you're taking like two separate concepts, trying to putting into one calendar, and it's like trying to mix them up. And the calendar becomes so complex that only like special people who understand the mathematics and the astronomy behind it can understand it fully and like even use it to like its full extent.
Yeah, because when you look at a lunar calendar, basically what we're saying is that each month is defined by the phases of the moon, right? From having no moon at all to a full moon.
Yeah.
Right? You're going through all the cycle all the way around.
Yeah.
That's 1 month.
Yeah.
And if you follow that cycle, it has no significance in relation to how we think of 1 year, which is one full trip around the sun for the earth to revolve around the sun. So when you're trying to measure the months based on the moon cycle, you're going to have that discrepancy because it doesn't correlate.
Example I can give is the Muslims, right? They follow the Hijri calendar, which is a purely lunar calendar. That's why their holidays always, sometimes they come in the summertime, sometimes they're in the winter time, sometimes it's spring, sometimes the autumn. It's always changing. It's
always moving,
Because by inherently the lunar year is shorter than the solar year. So like it's always going to be falling behind and behind and behind.
Yeah.
And what the Bikrami calendar tries to do is tries to force the lunar calendar to be as long as the solar calendar. It's like you're basically trying to force.
And how does it do that? How do you do that? What do you have to do to force it? Because it sounds like you're trying to put a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're trying to do, and it's somehow been working for all these years. What they do is every 3 or 4 years they insert a leap month into the lunar calendar.
An entire month.
Entire month gets added to, because after 3 or 4 years, it's like a whole month gap because the lunar year itself is short compared to solar calendar. So it's like after 3 or 4 years, a whole gap between the solar and lunar year. So they insert a month to make up that gap. And they call that a Malmas or like they call it a Shobha month. Ashobh it's impure because it's a leap month. And even this year, Asu, the month of Asu, was a leap month. That's why Guru Gobind Singh Ji's Gurpurab in the Bikrami calendar is coming on January 20th. That's why it's so late, because there was a leap month and that pushed all the dates after leap month like a month forward.
Right. Now, is this why, like a couple of years ago, there was 1 year where we celebrated Guru Gobind Singh's Gurpurab twice in the same year, once in January and once in December of the same year, and then not at all in the following year, because it fell in January and December and it's just a matter of days, but it puts you into a different year.
Yeah. So if you're looking at it purely from the Bikrami perspective, it's only 1 year because their year is a bit different from ours.
Right.
But if you're looking at from like, if you're comparing it to like, because we use Gregorian as our civil calendar, we use it every day for our daily business or our daily lives. And if you look at it in that aspect, it does come twice in 1 year. That's because eventually it falls back to the shortness. So like every year, the year is 11 days shorter.
Oh, right.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So it's 11 days shorter. So the solar
that's why after 4 years, you get a whole month added.
Yeah. Yeah. So eventually at one point, what happens is that the holiday can come twice in 1 year because the gap, it gets so big that it can't maintain the, like, it comes in the same year basically because it's the
and then you end up having to skip it in the next year.
Yeah.
Based on the Gregorian calendar.
Because in the Gregorian calendar next year, the leap months gets added, and that pushes all the dates ahead because to adjust for the discrepancy between the 2 years.
Right. So to avoid this kind of confusion, this is why the Nanakshahi calendar was developed in the first place. Create a solar-based calendar that is based on let's say based on Sikh ideas. Yeah. And some of those ideas are all the months that are in the Nanakshahi calendar are defined in Gurbani. So using the months that are defined in Gurbani as labeling the months for the calendar. Then also, I think Purewal uncle tried to maintain the seasons.
Yeah, that's
right. So
point.
So he wanted to say, okay, Vasak and Vasaki is this time of the solar year, and this is the season. So to maintain that, he had to kind of define that, and then also basing it off of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, just the way the Gregorian calendar is based off of Jesus. It gave it a Sikh identity. Right, we're defining it as a Sikh calendar because it's based on Guru Nanak. The months are based on the months as defined in Gurbani, and we're maintaining the seasons of what was happening during the Guru's times. But having said that, seasons are flipped in the Southern Hemisphere anyway, right? So it's not that it matters so much whether Vasak is in spring, and then it could over years and years be moved around, because it's following the Bikrami calendar. But that's not really the issue that the seasons match up. It's just kind of giving it a consistency.
So the seasons are flipped in the Southern Hemisphere. So people living in Australia, when it's our springtime, it's their fall time basically. Right. It's autumn for them. But the point is, we want to maintain that. Well, Guru Sahib wrote Gurbani, or like the Ucharan of Gurbani in Punjab basically, and that's the context we're basing out of. We want to make sure that if someone in Punjab, not someone in Punjab, basically want to maintain the same seasons as Guru Sahib wrote the Gurbani in that context. And so we don't want to have like in Punjab where it's Vasak, but the month of Vasak is now in the winter time for some reason, even in Punjab. Like you would obviously know that if you're living in Australia, the seasons are flipped. Right. That's that's common sense. But like if you're living in Punjab and the seasons are flipped, it makes no sense. Right.
And then because we have so many things related. I mean, obviously Vasaki, the importance that Guru Gobind Singh gave to it, but even Shabad like Nanak Vasaki Prabhava.
Barama,
you have these references to the seasons, and it just stays consistent that way.
Yeah. So you have let's see. Jayat Govinda Radhya Hove Anam Kana Sanjna Mil Paya Rasana Nam Pana. Like it's all related to seasons. So like in the other Baharama written by Guru Nanak Dev, you have Jayat Basant Pala Pavar Sohavade. So in the month of Jayat, the season of Basant, spring rises, and the bump and the bees are pollinating the flowers. It's all like it's all mentioned in Gurbani. So you want to maintain that. So.
Yeah, and just to clarify for some of the listeners, Barama is referencing a theme section in Guru Granth Sahib, and Barama is the 12 months.
Yeah. So there's two Bani and Guru Granth Sahib Ji. They're called Barama. There's one written by Guru Nanak Dev Ji, that's in Rag Tukhari, and then there's also another one by Guru Arjan Dev Ji, and that's in Rag Manj. This one's the one that's read mainly, the one by Guru Arjan Dev Ji.
Yeah.
And The point is that Guru Sahib related the months to the seasons. If Guru Sahib hadn't done that, if Guru Sahib hadn't linked the months to the seasons, we could be following Bikram right now. It'd be no problem.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Guru Sahib related the months to the seasons. We want to maintain that relationship. And obviously, Gurbani is going to be timeless. Gurbani is always true, regardless of what time it is, or what era, what joke, or whatever. But wouldn't it be nice to have a calendar that's based off Gurbani, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, just even staying consistent with the concept of Sikh identity. It's just another, we have our chanda, we have our own flag, we have a khanda, that represents the Sikh nation. We have Panj Kakars that represent the individual identity. There's so many things like that. And a calendar is just another tool that we can give a Sikh identity to, something that we relate to.
It's not like before the Nanakshahi calendar, we didn't have a separate identity. The Nanakshahi calendar just cements our identity further, basically.
Right.
That's the whole point.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and you could look at it, this is just a tool. It's a calendar is really not even that important, right? Like Guru Sahib is the message Guru Sahib is giving us isn't about how we measure time. What does a clock look like? These are just tools that we're using for.
For example, the time units mentioned in Gurbani, we don't use them anymore. It's Kadiyan, Pair, Jasse, all these like measurements that are mentioned in Gurbani. We don't use them. We use hours. We use minutes. We use in America we use miles. In other places, we use kilometers. We use pounds or kilograms. And that's not mentioned in Gurbani. They use the old Puratan methods of measurement, but we've discarded those and for modern methods. And that's not really a bad thing. We're just going along as time goes on, the science and the mathematics evolve. We just go along with it. That doesn't change the meaning of Gurbani.
Correct. Right.
So just because we can go from Bikrami to Nanakshahi, right? That doesn't change Gurbani. That doesn't change anything. We're just going to more modern methods that accurately represent time.
Right. Now, why do you think there is so much resistance though? Because in the Panth, we've had a hard time resolving this, right? We have some groups that are very anti-Nanakshahi. They want to stick with the old system. And you have other people that are so pro-Nanakshahi. They want to call everybody else backwards and, whatever. Like, but what is the issue? Why the resistance to change the Nanakshahi calendar?
If you look toward history, there's always been resistance to a new calendar, right? I forget who said this quote, but there's a quote that says to implement a new calendar, you either need a dictator or like a very large religious leader.
Oh, right.
Otherwise, a calendar is really hard to implement. And we can see this with the Gregorian calendar. So Pope Gregory introduced the Gregorian calendar in 1582, and all the Catholic countries in Europe and they quickly adopted it because that was their order, decree, whatever.
Order from the Pope, because Gregorian is actually referencing Pope Gregory. Gregory is his name.
Even though Pope Gregory didn't make the calendar, he hired some guy to make the calendar. Is
that right?
Yeah. So so it's not really truthful that he made the calendar.
But he's the one that implemented it, so it became known as the Gregorian. And since he was the Pope, Catholics quickly adopted it.
Yeah, but for example, look at England. So it took England 200 years to adopt this calendar. They were really resistant. They didn't trust the Pope. That's fine. A lot of controversy. We all know about that. And so it took them 200 years. And the only reason they changed it was, if I remember correctly, I read that the person who introduced a bill in their parliament, that I had no clue how the calendar works. I just knew how to smooth talk all the parliament members into thinking I knew all about calendars, and then that's how they passed it in the parliament. Really? Yeah.
So it's kind of a con job.
Yeah, because what happened, the guy said I went to the mathematicians and they tried explaining everything to me. It's it went all over my head.
Yeah.
So I just figured out how to make it seem like I knew everything.
Yeah, but he trusted the mathematicians. That was the whole point. He's like, obviously these guys know what they're talking about. Yeah. And I trust them. Let me go sell it.
Yeah.
Basically.
So, but it still took them 200 years. And the main reason it took them 200 years because they were still using the Julian calendar, which was made by Julius Caesar back all the way in the Roman era. And
Now that was also a solar calendar though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what would be the difference?
So the difference so there's different ways you can define a year. So we all know that a year is when one orbit around the sun. The Earth makes one orbit, right?
Right.
One revolution, and there's different methods of defining that. And the problem with the Julian calendar was they had a very rough approximation. I mean, think about it. This was during the Roman era. They didn't have like the greatest tools all that time. And then what happened was the Christians, they noticed that their Easter is starting to slip because Easter is supposed to be in the spring season.
Right.
And they noticed that, hey, it's slipping now. It's like 9 or 10 days off than what it used to be like 500 years ago.
Yeah. What's happening?
Yeah. So they found out that the year length they were using was a bit too, it was a bit too long. So they were using the Julian calendar had 365.25 days. That was a year length. So basically, you had 365 days in a year. After 4 years, the 0.25 would add up to a leap day.
Okay.
So that's where the 4 years leap day comes from. So you have the extra 0.25 that gets added up each year, and then every fourth year, I guess that 0.25 turned into a day.
Yeah.
But the problem with the Julian calendar was that they were adding too many leap years, right?
Oh, so they didn't know that it was 0.25 per se.
No, they
knew that.
That's the year they use, but the actual amount's like 365.242132. It's like really like a complex number, right? But they really just average it to 25, which caused a shift in one day in 128 years.
I see.
So every 128 years, it would be out of sync one day.
So that's why, like over 600-700 years, you're off weeks,
like 9 or 10 days.
Yeah. Okay.
And so basically, Pope Gregory, he wanted to fix this problem. He hired some mathematicians, and they reduced the year length in the Gregorian calendar to 365.2425.
Oh.
So I went from 0.25 to 2425, and that's still not accurate.
I was going to say, doesn't that still go off? It just goes off in 100 years instead of 10 years?
No. So like I said before, it's 2, 4, 2, 1, 3 something. That's like if you want to be accurate, right?
Oh, okay. So you're in the thousands.
Yeah. So what Pope Gregory and his mathematicians did was they put 2, 4, 2, 5. That causes a slip of one day in 3,000 years.
Oh, 3,000 years.
So it went from 128 years to 3,000.
Yeah.
So you can think like, they're like, okay, that's enough for 3,000 years.
Yeah, who cares? Yeah.
Yeah, like we're not like, who knows if we're alive by then, right? Yeah, so that's why they use that. And the reason why they use that because it was simple. Because if you go too deep into the numbers, like it gets complex. And the thing is, calendars for average people. And if average people, like if you start using these complex numbers with them, like how is like your average like printer going to print a calendar when they can't even calculate it because they don't know
But don't we do that? We add a leap year every fourth year. How are we not in the same problem?
So instead of adding a leap year every 4 years like the Julian calendar did, there's a rule now.
Okay, a quick Nihung edit here. While Sarabveer Singh is talking in the video, I just wanted to clearly read out what the rule is regarding the leap year for the Gregorian calendar, which is what we currently all use in the world. I figured it's much easier for me to just read the rule and explain it in this edit because him and I went back and forth on some of these calculations. Even though we Googled it, we were talking about it, I think I ended up causing much more confusion than necessary. So the rule is there's a small error that has to be accounted for. The Gregorian calendar stipulates that a year that is evenly divisible by 100, for example, the year 1900, is a leap year only if it is also evenly divisible by 400. So the years 1700, 1800, 1900 are not leap years, even though they are divisible by 4. The year 2000 was a leap year because it was divisible by 100 and by 400. 2100 is not a leap year. 2200 is not a leap year. 2300 is not a leap year, but the year 2400 will be. It's divisible by 4 and it is divisible by 400 while being divisible by 100. So if it's divisible by 4, and if it's divisible by 100, but still divisible by 400, it is a leap year. But if it is divisible by 100 and not by 400, it is not a leap year. So again, the examples would be 1700, 1800, 1900 are not leap years. The year 2000 is a leap year. So the Gregorian calendar accommodates the extra leap years by removing them every 100 years, but not on the 400 years that are divisible by 400. I hope that makes more sense. Okay. I think I get it. So that's how the new rule applies. And we don't think about it because the calendars all are calculated.
But they automatically do it. That's the thing.
Yeah. Everything's automatically done now. So the calendar is going to tell us if it's a leap year or not. We'll see.
Yeah.
Right.
But there's still been issues with software, right? So when companies write the calendar software, they forget like the 100 rule and the divisible by 400 rule. Right. And they keep doing they only do the divisible by 4 rule. So they end up having mistakes in their calendars as well. And that causes like issues for banks and everything.
Banking and everything. Right. Right.
Yeah. So
that's interesting. So Nanakshahi calendar.
It follows the same rule.
It follows the same rule. And that's how it stays accurate.
Yeah.
It might still, all of these calendars might still go off track, but we might be talking about hundreds of thousands of years or something before you.
So for 3,000 years. And I was talking to Purewal uncle, and he said he could have made it like one day in 90,000 years, but then we wouldn't be in sync with the Gregorian calendar. So what's the whole point then?
Oh, I see. Yeah. So part of what he was trying to figure out too was stay in sync with the Gregorian calendar so that there's no confusion.
For the average person, right? Because that's what we focus on. We want to focus on the average person who can celebrate the Gurpurs easily. They don't have to rely on so the Bikram calendar, we all know who makes them and who we have to rely upon to make them. I mean, I could make them now, but
as we're talking about this, it just kind of hit me. Guru Gobind Singh's Darbar was known for bringing in scholars of all kinds of categories, and information, just like rags, was divided by what they call ras. So different rases. Like there's a happy literature, there's bir ras type literature, and same thing with the rags, right? They're divided up like this. But one of the things that Guru Sahib was doing was he was getting all of this information that was usually only available to elites or priests and things like that, and then distributing it to the common people, making it consumable by common people. And I'm not going to try to get into controversy about what is accurate and what is not. Just knowing that Guru Sahib's Darbar, imagine he's calling all these experts on different topics. And then even something like Kirtan, like if you were somebody who was a master of rags and stuff, how does Guru Sahib take that knowledge and now distribute it to the common folks, taking complicated music and making it simple and available to the masses, and then when you were saying that about the calendar, it kind of clicked with me that it makes sense. What the Guru's mission is to provide truth and knowledge to common people, to all of us, so in the ways that we can comprehend it and understand it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I wanted to say I mean, if Guru Sahib wanted, Guru Sahib could have created a calendar, right? Guru Sahib could have created his own calendar, but he didn't, because I don't know I can't say what Guru Sahib was thinking, but what we know the nature of calendars that they're not forever. They're always evolving as mathematical constants change, as astronomy. We have new innovations and new ideas and new like discoveries, and they're always changing. So even though we've pushed it, rolled the can down the road 3,000 years. By 3,000 years, it might have something whole different that we might not have known of if we make a very accurate calendar now.
Oh, for sure. Even the concept of what a second is, right?
Yeah,
that's changed. Now we define it based on the electrons in an atom.
Yeah, the atomic clocks and stuff.
Yeah. So now a second is actually defined by that, and it's a much more accurate measurement than the way we used to measure previously.
So even like the miles and pounds we use, they're defined in kilometers and kilograms and grams now.
Right, right.
The U.S. doesn't have us, if I remember correctly, U.S. doesn't have physical representations of like a pound anymore. They just define it with kilograms. So it's much easier because the whole international scientific community already defines what a kilogram and a gram is, what a meter is. It's much easier to just use those measurements.
Right. So basically, Guru Sahib, of course, could have made a calendar, but there's a lot of things that Guru Sahib could have done. I know that, interestingly,
Guru Sahib was here to spread Gurmat, right? Not make calendars.
right. But even just talking about like the knowledge that Guru Sahib was distributing anyway. Yeah. But like even simple things like, when electricity was introduced at Darbar Sahib, a lot of people were against that. There was pushback because they all said, Guru Sahib used candlelight and fire, that we should use the same, but now nobody even argues that. Nobody
that's not even an argument anymore.
Nobody would even think about everybody's going to use electricity. Obviously, so when I think this is a similar kind of thing. Once people get used to the idea of, okay, this calendar is simple, it's more accurate, it's easier to follow, and more, I think the younger generation, they challenge it less. The older generation has issues because they're so used to continuing doing what they've always been doing.
Yeah.
But what I'm fascinated by is like, why do you think certain Jathebandis get stuck on it though? Like that it must be, because we know what happened. Nanakshahi calendar was created, it was calculated, it was debated, and it was implemented, right? And then there was pushback, mostly Sant Samaj, but there was a lot of pushback, debate that we don't want this calendar, you've messed up our dates. And then the Panth decided to kind of sneakily, they just mixed the two calendars together and said, okay, this is the new Nanakshahi calendar, is this mixed calendar? And then Purewal uncle had to change the name of Nanakshahi to Mool Nanakshahi in order to distinguish it. Yeah. But the mixture is almost worse than having one or the other.
So, but I think to understand this, you have to understand why the Nanakshahi calendar, how it was made actually.
Yeah. Okay.
So like I said before, like the Bikrami calendar is basically forcing the lunar year to be as equal as a solar year.
Right.
So like what our scholars in the 20th century thought was, why don't we just use the solar calendar straight up? Like, why don't we just use our solar dates?
Right.
And that's one of the uniqueness of the Sikh Panth, that we actually have solar dates. So some of the anti-Nanakshahi folk, they like to say, well, all other religions use lunar dates. Well, I look at it this way. They only use lunar dates because they can't figure out how to use solar dates. They don't have what year this happened, what year that happened. Our Sikh history is so like recent. It's only 500 years.
Okay, that's an interesting point. So Sikhism itself is a very recent religion in the scope of all religions. Judaism goes back 4,000 or 5,000 years, maybe longer. Christianity, goes back to Old Testament and Moses and all that. And then Islam also references Old Testament. So all these religions have an old source, and even Hindu beliefs, they go back, 5,000, 6,000, maybe more, whatever years.
Yeah.
So they're based on they have no way of figuring out. Well, they would have to calculate backwards to know what the date was. No, they don't have documentation like we do.
They can't calculate backwards. They can only make assumptions. They don't have the exact dates. For example, like Hindus celebrate Ram Navami or Krishna Ashtami. I don't know the exact names of their holidays, but the reason why they're called like Ram Navami is because they only know that, Ram was born on the 9th lunar day of this month. They don't know what year. So they can't figure out what the solar date equivalent of that is.
But so like something like the Mayan calendar, right? The Mayan calendar with the Mayans, they were using this, and everybody had, there was a big controversy many years ago that, the world 2012, the world is going to come to end because the Mayan calendar ends. There's no calculations.
After it's just that. We know that's all like nonsense now.
Right.
We're living now. But, Yeah, so that's the point. Like,
so they didn't know the actual year, so they can't even calculate backwards. But even if they knew the year, they could only calculate backwards. The difference is with Sikhi is we actually have dates documented on the Gregorian calendar.
We can say on the Gregorian calendar,
or not Gregorian, but on a solar calendar.
On the Bikrami calendar, yeah.
Bikrami calendar, that's solar based, not just the lunar.
No, we have both.
Okay, we have both. Okay.
Yeah. So as I think Bikram is a luni solar calendar, so it's both lunar and solar.
I see. Right.
Yeah. Right. So we have all these dates written down. We have all the years, and we have so Gurpurbs, they were written in lunar, right? So all the Gurpurbs are written in lunar, but everything else, like Ashri Deepurbs, are like all general events, all historical events, are majority solar.
I see.
So the question arises, why can't we just not use solar for Gurpurbs?
Right.
Because it's the same Bikrami calendar. We're just using the solar version of it. Right. Yeah. For example, I don't know why it's just Guru Gobind Singh is Gurpurb. That's where the debate always happens. Like all the other Gurpurbs, like no one cares. Gurpurb, like that's the special one.
That's the most exciting one.
I don't know what's like.
I think the main reason that Guru Gobind Singh's Gurpurb comes up as debate is because it's at the end and beginning of the year, and we have the issues where sometimes it's celebrated twice and sometimes it's not. So that becomes the most debated because that's the one that everybody notices is shifting the most, right? Yeah, I mean, if we really want to get into controversies, we also know Guru Nanak Dev Ji's Prakash Purab is actually Vaisakhi.
We don't know if it's. I'm not going to get into the argument because
but we don't have to get into that whole debate. But I'm saying there's a strong argument for those calculations. But and there's not that much debate about that. But Guru Gobind Singh's Guru Purab falls a few days off and everybody's up in arms.
Even saying Guru Nanak Dev is Gurpurab, right? It's fine. It might be 6 months off from the date we know, right? I'm not saying if it is. I'm saying that even if it's 6 months off, we still know Guru Nanak Dev Ji came on this earth in 1469, right? Like we know that definitively.
Right.
That's different from other like religions and dharms that don't even know the years.
Right.
So that's
nobody. Yeah, people don't know the exact year for like when Gautam Buddha or Krishna Ji, Ram, all those Jesus, Moses. These are all estimates. Yeah, they're all like
estimates basically. And with Guru Gobind, so the Guru Gobind Singh's Gurpurab, majority, if not all the sources say Guru Gobind Singh was prakashed on Pos Sudi Saptami, right? That's the date that there's no controversy over.
Yeah.
Everybody accepts that was the original date that's written.
Yeah.
But we also know that the Bikrami calendar also has a solar component. So there's two. So in a Bikrami calendar, there's two dates so let's say today, we would have 2 dates for the same day. So on that day, so there's also a Bikrami era. You got to think about that. So right now it's Bikrami 2076, something like 2077 right now.
Oh, okay.
So you got to think about that. So Guru Gobind Singh Prakash was in 1723 Bikrami era.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I guess one, I don't know, maybe this is an argument, I don't know. But one thing you could say is, okay, we know that date, that Bikrami date.
Yeah.
Why not go back to that date and then fix that date on the Gregorian calendar and celebrate it on that day every year?
So that's what some people argue. Why don't we just go straight to the Gregorian calendar? And the point is that we want to maintain our history and our uniqueness. Basically, we want to maintain our own dates. We don't want to use the English dates, basically, because first of all, there was no English calendar at that time. Maybe there might be the Julian calendar in some like Portuguese settlements or something. I don't know. I don't know the colonial history of India when the Europeans came, but there was no Gregorian or Julian calendar at that time. So we want to keep using the dates that we have and maintain our history. And so like in the future, when someone reads our old historical books, they can say, oh yeah, this date, we use this date for celebrating it. Yeah.
No, that makes sense, because even if we did go back and translate everything to the Gregorian calendar, now we are also following, the calendar is intended to be, Jesus based, right? We're saying, even though you said, as you pointed out, we don't know the exact year Jesus was born, but typically the idea is this is the 2021st year since Jesus's birth. That's what we're counting. And so why not just do that based on for our own religion?
Yeah, if you change to Gregorian, then all of the dates in our textbooks will be wrong.
They'll all be wrong.
Yeah, right. So we don't want to do that. That would mean to rewrite every textbook, and that's kind of the iffy topic. Like, rewriting textbooks, changing history. That's kind of the iffy topic.
Right, but you could also argue that it's nowadays with computers, it's easy to calculate, and you could do it once and then change everything. But again, you're just gonna cause more
confusion. There's enough confusion even using the Bikrami dates themselves with the Nanakshahi and Bikrami calendars. Like people, and then adding that component to add more confusion.
Right. So it really is just simpler at the basic face of it. It is just simpler to say, hey, this is our calendar, and it corresponds this way with the Gregorian calendar because it's based on the same scientific principles. Right? Yeah. It's same scientific principles, but different, Dharam, basically. It's based on Sikh things.
Yeah, we use the same base formula. Every calendar has similar formulas.
Right.
And we, just because Nanakshahi uses similar formulas to Gregorian doesn't mean it's a copy of the Gregorian calendar. It don't mean like every calendar is basically a copy of each other because they all have similar formulas, right? So you can't really claim that. And some people do claim that, but that's a wrong claim because then every calendar will be a copy of each other.
Right.
But
I maybe it's similar to this idea because back in the days when the Nihung was kind of up and coming, I used to do a lot of graphic design, build websites and things like that, right?
Yeah.
One of the things I used to do is build Windows themes, right? So Windows background, I'd change the cursor to a khanda. I'd add some, music, kirtan in the background or stuff like that.
Yeah,
so I create these
Windows stuff.
Yeah. Well, no, not even. It was 1990s. So it would have been 1995 to 99 was when I was doing a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about like Windows 95, Windows 98.
Okay, I think like Windows XP or something.
No, not even. XP was much later. Windows 95, Windows 98. I would make these key-based themes for Windows.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of the same concept. You have a platform that everybody's using, which was this Windows platform. And I could have a Disney theme. I could have a Star Wars theme. I could have all these different themes for my Windows. But making a Sikh theme wasn't like I was copying somebody else. I'm just creating something that we can identify with, that we like, that we want to see on that platform. And in a similar way, having this calendar, it's tied to our identity.
Yeah. So go ahead. Getting back on the Guru Singh group, I just want to finish that off.
Yeah.
So we all know the date was supposedly Saptami, the seventh day of the bright half of the month of the lunar month of Bull. Basically, that's what it means.
Okay.
And it was a 1723. That's the Bikrami year. But then we also look at the solar calendar, right? So that's the Bikrami lunar date. Let's look at the solar date was 23 Po.
23 Po.
Yeah. So in the Nanakshahi calendar, instead of using the lunar date, we just use a solar date because it's from the same calendar, just different systems.
I see.
So instead of having a lunar date that moves around every year and it's like a different date every year, we just have a solar date that's pretty constant in itself.
Yep. And you pick that and you're done.
So that was the suggestion made by Sikh scholars in the 20th century. Why don't we just move to solar dates? And then when they did move over to solar dates, they saw that the Bikrami solar calendar itself it was way better than before. Instead of having Gurpurs moving around year over year, the Gurpur would stay still. But it's still like how the Julian had a 1 day shift in 128 days.
Yeah.
Well, the Bikrami solar calendar had a shift of 1 day in 70 years. It's actually worse than Julian.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So what the Nanakshahi calendar, I like to say Nanakshahi is actually just a modded Bikrami calendar, but you'll understand why I say that, because what they did was they took the Bikrami solar calendar, changed some of the formulas so they are like according to the seasons instead of according to the stars. If you want me to explain that, I'll explain that later.
Yeah. That's fine.
and then they changed some of the form. They changed like the year length, and then they changed the name, changed from Bikrami solar to Nanakshahi, and that's about it.
Yeah.
All the dates in Nanakshahi are from the Bikrami solar calendar. Just that we just changed a bit of the variables and the formulas in the calendar, and that renamed it to Nanakshahi because it was no longer like a Bikrami calendar. So
right. So it's really an enhanced Bikrami solar calendar,
basically. And a lot of people don't get that. It's really simple, but it's like really hard to like, because like in Bikrami calendar stuff moves around, but that stops happening in Nanakshahi. But the reason that stops happening in Nanakshahi is because they fixed that movement. Yeah. Basically. And,
I think that's honestly, I don't know how deeply I understand that either. Yeah. I understand the concept that if you're measuring your year based on the lunar cycle, the moon going around the earth has nothing or very little to do with how the earth goes around the sun. Yeah. Right. So if you're spinning this way while you spin this way,
there's a little gravitational pull.
That's what I was saying. The little, if
scheme, there's not much.
Yeah. So there's some effect, but and so the reason I was bringing that up is I was going to ask you this earlier when we were talking about why people are resistant, because it's lunar, based on the lunar cycles. We can, especially when you get in not astronomy, when people get into astrology.
Yeah, that's a whole different
the phases
thing.
Of the moon, where the stars are lining up, things like this. When you're attached to that mentality of, things can be predicted, or things could be good luck, or things could be bad luck, or this, then it's really hard to get rid of Purnamashi, we must do these rituals. Well, if I'm looking at Purnamashi, I need to know on the calendar, when is the moon going to be full? When is it not? What is the cycle going to be?
Like looking at history, Purnamashi, Masya, Sangrans, there's something spiritual about them. Sikh and Guru Sahib and Sikhs just use them as like a meeting day, because everybody knew when they were, right? So like it's not like everybody had a calendar back then, but everybody knew, that day is Sangran, that day is Purnamashi, that day is Masya, that day is, and they knew that those are common days. So
it's no different than we have Christmas break, and maybe people go to a smogum or something during Christmas break. You wouldn't say that we're doing smogum because of Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. We don't celebrate Jesus at all.
Yeah.
We just take using the opportunity to do Guru Sahib's praises instead.
Right. And so it's the same thing then in Punjab and in India. The Gurus were just using the time that everybody would normally be celebrating or normally be not working or normally, and then use that to implement the Sikh way of thinking.
Yeah, so it seemed like Guru Sahib held Jod Mele on Vaisakhi, on Maghi, on Diwali. They held Jod Mele. They didn't celebrate Vaisakhi. I mean the Diwali itself.
Right.
They didn't celebrate Ramchandra coming back to Ayodhya from his younger. They were celebrating Akatte Hui, right? Everybody Sikh come together and that was the main point basically.
And I think that's true with Vaisakhi too. We're more Punjabi sometimes than we are Sikh. When it comes to Vaisakhi, we're celebrating, the beginning of the year, the harvest, the colors, the dancing, the music. People get stuck in the cultural thing.
That's another thing too. In Gurbani, the New Year starts in Chaith, not Vaisakh. Mm-hmm. And Nanakshahi, the New Year starts in Chaith, but in the Bikrami calendar, the New Year starts on Vaisakh.
Oh yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
because that's the way it's written in the Bani.
Yeah, and Gurbani is Chaith.
Yeah.
But in Bikrami, they use Vaisakh as a new year.
Right. That's another good point why it makes sense to have this calendar with the months in the order that they're in.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. And, so what I was getting at though with the astrology stuff is when you're obsessed with that, because look, we know the moon has an effect on the earth, the way the tide is.
The tides and the
animals behave differently based on the phases of the moon. I am sure that there is some behavioral effect that can happen on humans and things like that. Like, people might have different emotions or different feelings because all these things are out there having an effect. Like even physicists, they say that we can measure the gravitational pull of a star billions of miles away on an individual. You can do a calculation to figure out what is the gravitational pull. The whole universe is connected. But whether or not that can give you any kind of spiritual or mystical or anything like that, that kind of stuff.
I mean, Guru Sahib, if you read Barama, right, it says, let me actually pull it up. I don't want to read it wrong. It's the It's the worst thing I can do. So we have, let me search it. It's the Tetwar Mogad Gawar, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Mogad Gawar. Tithi War Seve Mogad Gawar. That's the one. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, so Ape Pura Kare So Hoye, E Tithi War Duja Doe. So these days only lead to duality, right?
Right.
Sakuru Bajo on the Gubar, Tithi War Seve Mogad Gawar. So people only worry about the lunar day. Tithi is the lunar day. That's what it means.
Yeah.
The people who only worry about them are Mogad. They're fools, right? And Nanak Gurmukh Buja Soji Pai Ekat Naam Sada Reha Samai. Right?
Yeah. So stay immersed in the Nam.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. That's the other thing that
stay in Nam. Don't focus on what lunar day is it. Some people say, what is it a good Wednesday? Is it a bad Wednesday? That's also in the Bikram calendar, right? Is this Wednesday a good Wednesday or bad Wednesday? There's stuff like that too.
Right. Like the superstitions, basically.
Yeah, don't focus on that. Just focus on Nam, right?
Right.
And Bhai Gurdas Ji says, Bhai Bhakt Gurpurab Kurande Nam Danish Nam Dardaya, right? So we celebrate Gurpurabs focusing on the Nam. That's the main point of Gurpurab. Not because it came on a certain lunar day and that's really good.
Or even happy birthday Guru Sahib. It's not, we don't really care that it's happy birthday Guru Sahib. Right? That's not, the whole point is that we should be using these days to remember Waheguru. That it's an excuse.
Yeah.
It's not to celebrate the person. It's actually an excuse to remind ourselves what we need to do. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And
I think that's one thing that in this debate, people forget what the purpose of a Gurpurab is.
Right.
They're so involved in what date should we celebrate is that they forget what you're supposed to do on the Gurpurab itself. I think that may be one of the reasons why some people have difficulty getting away from it is when you have a lot of Sant Baba types and stuff, they depend on things like Purnamashi and stuff like that so that they can give people, get people to come Matadik, bring money, show up, And Purewal Uncle talked about this. For example, I have. Okay, so this is the Nanakshahi calendar that I make, right? This is it's like a version. Okay, and we give Purnamashi and Masya dates in the calendar because it's an astronomical. Even if you look at like general calendars you buy from the store, it says full moon this day, new moon this day. So that's
like you said, it's an actual thing happening. So it's worth documenting. Scientifically, it's a real thing.
It's an astronomical event. Yeah.
Yes.
But I like what Purewal Uncle said. He said that, and so let people come on Purnamashi and Vasya, but do prachar that we shouldn't be focusing the day is Purnamashi we focus on.
Yeah.
That just use this day on Gurbani, right? It's not because of Purnamashi day special. It's because we come together and focus on Nam Gurbani, right? That's why.
Right.
And don't focus so much on it's Purnamashi, it's Masya, this it's a Dasmi, right? It's the 10th lunar day. Some people say Dasmi, it's a Shubh Wednesday. Like don't focus on that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think for most of us or the general masses, I think we would just go along with whatever we're told. The people that get to tell, it matters a lot to them. The ones that are doing the telling of what today, it matters a lot to them.
I mean, we both know about them, I won't go into detail.
Yeah. We don't need to do that, but I just want people to be aware because a lot of people are going to listen to this, I think, are people that, we all know a little bit and then we all know enough to go along with what the people around us are saying, but we don't really admit what we don't know. And we haven't really learned it in detail because honestly, it is a technical thing and it is difficult.
Yeah,
it's difficult, to sit there and understand why it isn't. I think putting it into these general terms of, hey, look, it's simple. We just want something Sikh based.
Would it be possible to share my screen?
Yeah, hang on here. Let me see.
Do you see this?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the Earth's orbit around the sun, basically. And we can see that, okay, so the Earth is spinning this way. And we also see, so we see this, do you see my mouse?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So
we see this pink line that's going to the Earth. That's the Earth's axis. I think.
Yep.
That's common knowledge, right? And
right.
The Earth spins.
The Earth's tilted. Yeah.
The Earth's axis tilted 23.5 degrees, and Earth spins on its axis. That causes a day, so day and night. Earth spins on its axis. But then we also see that due to the tilt of the axis, that's what causes the seasons. So you can see
that's the exposure of the face of the Earth to the sun tilted. Yeah. That's what directly affects how harsh the sun is hitting.
Yeah. So we have summertime here, autumn here, winter, March, and the spring over here. So basically, this is what the Nanakshahi calendar is based off of, basically.
Yeah.
Because in a Gurbani, right, Guru Sahib mentions Rat Fira, Chaya Tan Taka, Teen Lava Manj Bare. And that means Rat Fira in this Pankti means the summer solstice. So Guru Sahib is directly mentioning the summer solstice in Gurbani. And what Nanakshahi...
Explain what summer solstice is. That's the longest day of the year. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the longest day of the year, and that's the day when summer starts, basically.
So the first day of summer, because it's the longest day because of the way the Earth is tilted and facing the sun and the position in the revolution.
Yeah, so we can see here it's on June 20th/21st, and this is the summer solstice right here.
Okay.
And this is mentioned in Gurbani, right? And this is what the Nanakshahi calendar is based on. So how the Nanakshahi calendar measures the year, it's from the summer solstice to the next summer solstice. That's one difference because the Christians, they use Easter, right? So Easter is with spring. They measure from the spring equinox to the next spring equinox. Nanakshahi measure from the summer solstice to the next summer solstice. That's one difference that with the Nanakshahi. Even though in reality there's not much of a difference, it's just
you're just picking a reference point.
Different reference point, basically. Yeah. And another thing I want to show, we have this diagram here, and so we have the same for the solstices and the equinoxes, and we also have the two extremes of the Earth's orbit. So you can see the Earth is not going in a circle; it's going like more of an oval. Right? Yeah. This is called an ellipse. So it's elliptical.
Right.
And due to the nature of this, you can see from March to September, that's a long distance. Compared to from September back to March, you can see how it's a longer distance.
Right. Okay.
And in the Nanakshahi calendar, that's why the first 5 months are 31 days. Because
that represents the longer distance that is traveling.
Yeah, the actual orbit of the Earth is slower in that area in those months compared to the winter months, where it's much faster because the distance is much smaller.
Okay, so literally we're front loading the months with the 31 days, and because it's a longer traveling path on that elliptical shape.
Yeah,
and then then the back months are shorter because it's 5 months, but they're also 30 days.
It's 7 months of 30 days and 5 months of 31 days.
Okay. Oh, the other way. Okay.
Yeah. So, and this is the reasoning why. It's not just random numbers someone picked, right? This is the reasoning. We're following like astronomy. So like the Earth it goes slower in the summer months and it goes faster in the winter months.
I see.
Yeah. And you can see the sun is not the center too. The sun's just like kind of offset.
Right.
As well. And that's just one technical point I want to show you. Like the Nanakshahi calendar is not some arbitrary thing. It's actually based on science and astronomy.
Right. Yeah. No, interesting. That's really cool. That's good to know. I think it appeals to different people in different ways. Like it definitely appeals to me and speaks to me as a Sikh identity thing, right? Like I like that. But for a lot of people, the science is it just makes you feel like, the more accurate we are, the more truth we're telling.
Yeah, I'm more focused on the science part. It's just really cool. Instead of having a calendar that's like really complex for no reason, we have this simple one that's still following astronomy, basically.
Right.
Yeah, because okay, look, the Bikrami calendar, right? The day. Okay, so we assume like right now our day starts at 12 a.m., right, or 00 24-hour time.
Yeah.
And the Bikrami calendar, day starts at sunrise. So a day is from sunrise to sunrise.
I see.
And because a day is from sunrise to sunrise, there's different rules in like there's like 5-6 different rules on how to determine the first day of the month.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's why there's over like 30 different Bikrami calendars in India.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
So that's how complex it gets. Okay, first you have 6 different ways of, okay, so you have Sangram, right? There's 6 different methods of determining the Sangram. Then you have 2 different schools of thought for formulas. We have the older ones that follow the Sanskrit Granths. Like there's a Sanskrit Granth called Surya Siddhant.
Yeah.
That was written in like 500 AD. And that's the so the calendars during Guru Sahib's physical time, the calendars were based on the formulas in that Granth. But now the Bikrami calendar that people are using today, they're based on completely like modern NASA-based astronomy.
I see.
And they completely took out all the formulas from the Sanskrit Granths and just completely replaced the whole calendar. Just that it looks from the outside, it looks the same. But the internals are all like gutted out and changed. Like it's like if you took a car and you did like a whole engine swap and transmission swap, but the body of the car is the same. That's what it is. And
I see.
People did it, and this happened in 1964. And at that time, nobody asked the Sikh Panth like, "Hey, we're doing this like major change to our calendar." And they know we use the same calendar, but they never asked us or like even gave us a heads up, like, "Hey, we're changing the whole calendar, guys." Like nothing.
Yeah.
So what the Nanakshahi calendar does, it gives us control of our own calendar, right? And that's one of the main. That goes to your point, like Sikh identity. We have control of our own calendar. We don't have to rely on a third party to do like corrections or something for us.
Very cool. Very, very interesting. No, a really good explanation, and I appreciate these diagrams. It really helps kind of, solidify, the basic science behind it.
Yeah.
I hope people will take the time to kind of maybe dig into this a little bit. One of the difficulties though that comes up is the Akal Takht has adopted the mixed calendar, what they're calling Nanakshahi, which is a mixed calendar, not the Mool Nanakshahi.
Well, I don't want to get too much into politics because that gets controversial, but basically in 2003, in 1999, they released the Nanakshahi calendar.
Yeah.
And then it was taken back because there was a lot of controversy. People didn't like it. And then after
by the way, the significance of the 1999 release was they kind of had planned it that way.
Yeah, because that was
of Tinso Sala. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it was controversial. So they spent 3 years or like 4 years discussing it.
Yeah, debating.
He released it in 2003 with some modifications. So the modifications that happened were that all the Nanakshahi, all the Gurpurbs and historical dates were to be solar, but 3 dates were to be kept according to Bikrami, right? That was a compromise made in 2003. And that's still being followed today. Well, by me, others. So this is the problem because now there's no standard. People are making the own decisions, but I'm still following the 2003 decision that Guru Nanak Dev Ji's Prakash Gurpurb, Holla Mohalla, and Bandi Shor Divas Diwali are supposed to be kept according to the old Bikrami method for like as a compromise, as a compromise, and to like keep like some holidays.
Yeah, keep some kind of Panthic unity, so it doesn't isolate any particular group or people.
And that was working fine from 2003 to 2010. And then we all know what happened in 2010. They reversed it, and we all know who the actors were. Well, I'm not gonna get into that, who was. And then, so in 2010, they made like a Frankenstein calendar. They took the Nanakshahi calendar, right? And because the Nanakshahi calendar was pure Nanakshahi, just had 3 Gurpurbs or three of holidays were different, like on different like.
And even Purewal uncle was on board with that, saying he was saying, I understand it's too hard to just get the Panth to up, change. Yeah. So,
but in 2010 they kept the Nanakshahi calendar, but then moved like more Gurpurbs according to Bikrami. And then in 2015, just completely scrapped it and then went completely 100% to Bikrami, right? So they did this under the name of Sold, so like correction, but it's not really a correction. You're just going back to whatever previously you were doing.
Yeah,
And,
which is what they were probably going to end up doing anyway. But what I was going to ask you about is, because it's what the Akal Takht follows, a lot of people feel like even if they want to follow Nanakshahi the way we've talked about today, the way it's calculated, that it's somehow maybe going against Akal Takht if you do that. What do you think about that?
I don't want to answer this question because it gets controversial. People can start calling me out for it, but
no, I'm asking you though. I am asking you, what do you think about people who feel like I'm going against Akal Takht if I follow it personally? Do you think it's? Do you think?
No, I don't think, because you're technically following the decision of Akal Takht made in 2003. They passed it in 2003. You're just following that decision.
Yeah, kind of pick and choose what year.
So I'm just following what they passed in 2003. There was a whole Panthic discussion, and they all had there was a compromise made, so everybody agreed upon it. And and the Panth was all following it, like all happened. There was like no issue from 2003 2010.
Yeah, well, I think there was a lot of behind the scenes issues because, like I said, people that have interest in maintaining those celebrations that way, in line with Hindu practices, those people want to maintain those dates and calendar because they don't want people doing separate things. They want kind of everybody in the country.
Yeah, well,
right.
For example, like so aside from those 3 days, there were 3 other dates that were also kept the same. There were, because you have the birthdays of the Bhagat Sahibhan, right? You have Bhag Kabir Ji, Bhag Namdev Ji, Bhag Ravidas Ji. Well, the Sikh Panth isn't the only one that celebrates them, right? So those were kept the old method as well, because other communities held them, like the Kabir Panthis, the Ravidasiya community. They also celebrate it. So we can't force our date upon them. So those were taken as those were also taken as the old method. But our Gurpurs were as per Nanakshahi, aside from the 3 that we had a compromise on.
You know, another thing about having our own calendar, it's not that different than us having our own marriage ceremony. You know, we do Lama around Guru Granth Sahib instead of doing it around a fire. We do 4 Lama because it lines up with Gurbani instead of going around 7 times. You know, like we also kind of took a cultural tradition and defined it through the Sikh lens. You know, on Gurbani. And
that's basically
the Panth just agreed to do that, and we all do it now.
It's a good thing you mentioned that. Basically, what the Nanakshahi calendar is they took the Bikrami calendar and just looked at it through a Sikh lens. Yeah, and they because the Bikrami calendar, they follow the stars, and we say no, Gurbani doesn't follow stars.
You were going to explain that about the stars. So, what do you mean that it follows the stars?
So, how I mentioned, there's different ways of measuring the year. So what I would say, the Bikrami calendar is the only calendar in the world that I know of the major calendars that uses this method. It's called the sidereal method. Okay. That measures the year based on a fixed star. So they look at what they use the zodiacs, so the 12 zodiacs. They use the real position of the zodiacs, the zodiac constellation, and they measure the year based on that. Okay. And that comes around to 365, 6 hours and 9 minutes.
Interesting.
So that's a length. Well, Gregorian, the Nanakshahi, the Iranian calendar, the Chinese calendar, all the other major calendars, they use the tropical year. That's based on the graphic I just showed before, the equinox and solstices, because they want to maintain the link with the seasons. They don't really care about what the stars are doing, because we want to use them for our lives, right? Because we relate more to the seasons than like whatever stars they are, right?
Well, just to stop you right there too, I know most of my audience is pretty educated and they'll know this, but in case some people don't, we don't think about it, but the sky is moving because the earth is rotating and it's moving through space in these revolutions. So anybody that's been like camping out, in open desert areas or mountain areas or whatever, and they see a clear sky, as you're sitting there looking at the sky all night long, the whole sky is moving. Stars are moving across the sky.
So we think the stars are moving,
right?
Just the earth rotating.
Right. Well, but you can follow them over the course of a year, and they will move not just
because
through the sky.
The stars, they're so far away.
Yeah.
To us, they remain relatively fixed. So we can use them as measurements. But the thing is, we don't really relate to the stars, do we? I mean, some people use a North Star for like navigation. But even the North Star changes.
Yeah.
And because this if I explain that, it's going to go way deep into astronomy and it might go over the heads of someone. If someone wants to contact me, I'll tell them everything they want. But you know, okay, I'll give a simple explanation. The Earth, we also have the axis, which is tilted 23 degrees, right? 5. But you also know the axis is spinning like a top. So like this is my water bottle. We flip it 23, but it's also spinning. The Earth is spinning like this over a span of 26,000 years. The Earth goes like this.
Wow.
So this is the axis is pointing north, and whatever this is pointing, that's a North Star. So right now it's Polaris, but then if we go like this, the North Star changes to something else. So it's you know, astronomy goes over people's heads and like, you know.
And you're saying Bikrami calendar is based on measuring the position of a fixed star, where when it leaves its fixed spot that we're observing and comes back to it.
Yeah.
That is 365 days and 6 hours and 9 minutes or whatever you said.
Yeah, 9 minutes. Yeah, that's if we measure using the equinoxes or the solstices, we get 365 days, 5 hours, and I think like 43 minutes, if I'm not wrong.
Wow.
Yeah, so you have like a difference of like almost like around 20 minutes. And so it's 5 hours, 365 hours, 48 minutes and 45 seconds. That's the Nanakshahi definition of a year. And you can see the difference.
Yeah.
And it's not like, oh, the Bikrami has that difference because they're wrong. Well, they're not wrong if they're according to their methodology. That's that for us is wrong because
no, even their methodology, once they figured that out, it was more advanced than anything other people had done before it, right? They were also advancing their knowledge and how to calculate this.
So
there's no reason to just pick that time now and say, stop there. They were also an advancement.
So the calendar came around like in 500 AD, and the definition that they had back then was 365 days, 6 hours, and 12 minutes. So you can see how like, even back then, they had that definition. Now it's 9 minutes. They fixed it like 3 minutes earlier. Yeah, and that was one of the reforms they did back in the 1964 whole like change. They changed the year length 3 minutes earlier, and so you can see the difference, right? And that different adds. So like in Nanakshahi follows the seasons, but Bikrami follows the stars. So for an average person, we relate more to the seasons, right? Because like that's when like we're like, oh, fall is coming, winter is coming. We only think like, oh wow, this is this star, you know, that's that star. I can't even see the stars. We live in the suburbs, you know, city light pollution.
Yeah, you got light pollution and stuff. Yeah,
you can't even see stars anymore. It's really sad, but
no, that's really interesting. I didn't know that aspect of it. I hadn't understood it. That's interesting to hear that, and especially in hearing all the different definitions of a year over time, and even then, that even solidifies it even more for me. That now we have such an accurate definition, and that's what we implemented. The most accurate that we know.
Yeah.
And in the future, like you said, if somebody can calculate it even better, we'll be using some different tool, you know, and everybody will adopt that.
And things with Nanakshahi, it was made flexible. So in the future, it can easily be modified to use any future formula that comes around. So that was one of those because Bikrami itself is really complex. To figure out a day, you got to first find sunrise. When sunrise? Okay, you got to figure out sunrise. What city are you in? Okay, then you got to find longitude, latitude. You got to figure out, what's your, then you got to figure out, you got sunrise. Then you got to figure out what's the phase of the moon. And you got to figure out, okay, at sunrise, what's the phase of the moon? That becomes this day. And then next day, is it
it's unnecessarily overcomplicating it.
I mean, like, I respect it. They created such a complex calendar like 1,500 years ago, but like it's too complex, and people like standard stuff, like they can like easily tell like, honestly, it you know what it reminds me of? You know how like you see these math problems when you're a kid and they're really long, complicated math problem at the end, it says times zero.
And the answer is just 0 after all these super complicated calculations. You just multiply by 0 and your answer is 0. It almost reminds me of that. Like these calculations, it took some brains to figure all that out. But ultimately at the end of the day, you're right. We relate to the seasons. So defining everything based on the seasons makes the most sense. And that's what Gurbani does. Gurbani does that.
I have a quote from someone. It says, from a chronological point of view, the substitution for the mean calendric system. That means like you can like easily like the Gregorian calendar is a mean calendar system. Like you already know next year, like it's like today's a Wednesday, so next year January is going to be a Thursday.
Right.
That's something like you already know. One based on true movements, so like Bikram, it's based on true movements. They like to use with this time sunrise. What's the movement of what's the exact position of the moon? What's the exact position of the Earth on the orbit of the sun? According to the sidereal year, was anything but an improvement. It destabilized the foundations of time reckoning. Indeed, the system may have been a charm of adapting daily life as nearly as the astronomical knowledge permitted to the movement of heavenly bodies. But on the other hand, it broke ties with history as there was no unity of elements or systems. The very complexity of the system is proof of its primitiveness. Right. So this is a book called Calendrical Calculations. It's like the de facto standard. It's like an authoritative book on like calculations and formulas for like all the major calendars in the world. And this is like the beginning part of the section labeled the modern Hindu calendars. I don't know if you can see that.
No. It actually reminds me of, there's a very famous Bruce Lee quote, and this actually applies to everything, your emotions, your workouts, business, self-improvement. It's not the daily increase, but daily decrease. Hack away at the unessential.
Yeah. So like this is basically the quote meant like it became so complex that it wasn't meant for like time, like keeping time. It's like, it was just too complex just for like, hey,
just for the sake of being complex.
Like, that's what the Bikram calendar is. And I guess and some Hindus, they pride themselves on that. Like, our calendar is so complex. We follow exactly to like how the astronomy is. Yeah. Like what they think astronomy is like.
But again, sometimes I wonder, like, are they convoluting astronomy and astrology to?
Yeah, that's the problem. They're mixing those two because they're basing, Sangrand is supposed to be the start of the month. But that's also based on when they claim that the sun enters this zodiac. Right. Okay. Yeah. So I want to get people clear that astrology is not astronomy. Astrology at one point was related because that's what people had at that time, like many thousands of years ago, because that's what people used. Because they also use mathematics to measure like where the stars stuff are. But eventually, when Newton came,
you wouldn't call it a science. It's more of
today. It's not a science.
Yeah.
It's just,
it's a belief system.
Yeah, and
really. Yeah, astronomy is the science, the study of.
This type of calendar stuff in modern astronomy is like baby stuff. Like they're focused on like planets millions of away. All that type of stuff. We already know that because we already know that, but. They're focused on like crazy stuff. We're just on baby steps, like calendar calculations. Right. This was like already figured out, like 500 years ago stuff. Right. And things with astrology is that so there are actually Hindu or Indian like astronomers who actually want to fix the Bikram calendar, just like how Purewal uncle did. They want to do the same thing. Yeah, but they're getting a lot of pushback. They get pushback because people, they rely more on the astronomy. They want to like know like what Rashi, zodiac it is, all that type of stuff. And they weren't able to do it. And the funniest part is that if someone reads the original Sanskrit Granth, the Surya Siddhant Granth, that's like where the Bikram calendar comes from. It says they were trying to do the measuring the tropical year itself. So the year that we're using in Nanakshahi, the year that like all other calendars use, that's what they were trying to achieve. That's what they were trying to accomplish. But they mistakenly, because they're so primitive, right? And they accidentally measured the sidereal year. I see. And then, so the true motive was what Nanakshahi was doing. Yeah. But then they had the wrong calculation, and people just keep following that method. And
Right.
They don't want to break it. So in a sense, you can claim that Nanakshahi is the true Bikrami calendar.
Right. That's what they were trying. That's what they were trying to do.
That's what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
They were trying
and
to
we
do
figured it out.
Yeah. I mean, like other people figured it out, and we didn't.
Right. Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
No, honestly, it's been enlightening. You really educated me on a lot of how this all works, and I think you were able to put it into plain terms. And I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. And I'm sure there's going to be people that are going to want to debate and stuff, and I think that's okay. But if anybody has any questions, if you're open to it, I mean, I'll post your website in the comment or in the description. But if you have contact information, or they can go to your website and get your contact information too. Yeah. If people have questions and they want to reach out, I'm not sure how many people are listening, and it's not like I have a huge audience. But I think still there's a lot of people like me that know a little bit enough to be dangerous, but really understanding in depth the purpose behind all of this makes it a lot clearer. It makes it a lot clearer why it's important for us to adopt a calendar.
So like there's a lot of misinformation around there. I'll basically sum it up to this. The Nanakshahi calendar follows Bikrami dates, but all it did was take the Bikrami calendar and refine it. So we can also have it based on the seasons instead of like the stars as the Hindus want it. It's fine. They can do what they want, but we want to follow Gurbani. Gurbani says, Gurbani Guru Sahib wrote Barama related amongst the seasons. So we want to relate the calendar to the seasons.
Yeah, it really it's no different than the Lama. We have Lama, we have the Char Lama in Guru Granth Sahib. Yeah. We just modified the Hindu practice of marriage into our own version of it based on Gurbani. Nanakshahi calendar, the Mool Nanakshahi calendar, what we call Mool Nanakshahi, is same thing. It's taking a calendar, a culture that's based on the culture, and adopting it to ours based on Gurbani.
So like, I don't like some people like they have an issue saying like, oh, Guru Sahib just Bikrami. Why don't we use it? Well, I acknowledge Guru Sahib is Bikrami. This is just a natural refinement of Bikrami itself.
Yeah, and Guru Sahib also used candles to read at night.
Yeah.
Guru Sahib also rode horses and didn't have cars.
Like we're not denying that. We actually want to make sure that the dates given like in our granths and our books actually stay like relevant.
Right.
If we really want to switch over to Guru, some have done that, and there's actually, I'm not gonna name names, but actually one person who just took the Gregorian calendar, just changed the 12 months to Guru Sahib name. So January became Guru Nanak Ma. February came with Guru Angad Ma. March came Guru Amar Ma. And people made this type of stuff up, but no, that's.
But there's not that much significance to all of that. That's just changing.
Yeah, that's just like you're stealing something and just like renaming the months. Yeah, like
and I think also I hope people understand. When Guru Sahib gave us Guru Granth Sahib, Adi Granth was compiled. A Granth was the top technology of the time. Yeah. And that's what Guru Sahib was using, was the technology of the time to get the message out to the masses.
Yeah.
And Guru Sahib adopted it. Guru Sahib adopted guns. Guru Sahib adopted whatever technology was coming. And I see that the Panth carries that torch. The Panth adopts the latest technologies, but in a Gurmat-based way.
Yeah, that's the whole point. Like just how we adopted minutes, hours, minutes, kilograms, pounds, and we don't use the measurements that mentioned in Gurbani. Doesn't mean we're disrespecting Gurbani.
Right.
It's just that modern methods are more accurate, and then Gurbani is always timeless, so the meaning is then not going to change. It's just that we're using different methods, and we can also look at the context and like, at that time in India, they used tole, maase for like weights, and they use like
stuff like that.
And they use kadiyan, pairans, and like that type of stuff for time. But we don't use that now.
Right. Okay. Well, Sarabveer Singh, I really, really appreciate you coming on and going in depth. It's really been fun talking to you. I'm glad we were able to meet up and do this. Come back anytime. If you anything else you want to talk about, or if we need to go in more depth, if people want to hear more, we could always do something like that too.
Yeah.
But definitely, thank you so much. Thank you for spending time with me, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.